Hi, 8th grade. Today we're doing the second day of lesson 9-4, and that is factoring to solve quadratics. So we're still going to be using the zero product property. We're just going to be factoring in order to get to the situation where we have two binomial parentheses multiplied together. Our gotta check is going to be page 556, number 2A, and our homework for tonight is page 558, numbers 14 to 16, and 20 to 22, and our bell ringer in 3 sentences is page 552, number 54. All right, let's get going with this. So yesterday we did the zero product property for quadratics, and that was wonderful. However, most of the time when you get a quadratic equation, you do not have it in that format. Most of the time you have it in expanded form, and then you have to go back and do the factoring yourself. So how do we factor to solve quadratics? Well, the first thing is we need to have our quadratic in standard form. That is very, very important. If it's not in standard form, you cannot go ahead with this step. So that means in order to find solutions, our quadratic will have to be in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Okay, it's got to be in standard form. All right, if it's not in standard form, it won't work. So first, check and make sure that your quadratic is in standard form. And you're going to see how I do this in the example. Okay, the second thing is you're going to factor your quadratic. Okay, and your goal, so when you factor your quadratic, your goal is going to look like 2 parentheses, okay, equals 0, or sometimes we'll even have, for example, like a variable times, something in parentheses equals 0. Okay, so you might have to factor out the GCF. So this is a GCF leftovers factoring. You might have 2 binomials. Okay, so most of the time our goal is 2 binomials. Sometimes you might have a GCF plus leftovers. So I'm just going to do that L plus O. Okay, so that's your goal. All right, then once you factored this, okay, you're going to use the zero product property from yesterday. So what that means is you're going to set all the pieces equal to 0. So you'll use the zero product property and you're going to set parentheses or whatever pieces you have equal to 0. Okay, let's see how this works using an example. So I'm going to start with the example x squared plus 8x equals negative 15. Okay, so the first thing I notice when I look at this particular quadratic is that it is not in standard form. In order to be in standard form, it must equal 0, and this is not correct. Right now, it equals 15. Okay, so that means I have to play the game of switcheroo to get the 15 over to this side of the equation. So this side equals 0. So as I take a look at this, I can play the game of switcheroo by adding or subtracting. That's how you play the game of switcheroo. So since this is a negative 15 already, I'm going to add 15 to both sides. Okay, and now I'm going to have a quadratic I can work with. So now my quadratic looks like x squared plus 8x plus 15 equals 0. Okay, so I just switcherooed, move that 15 to the other side. Okay, so now I have to factor. As I look at this, this is a trinomial. Okay, this is not a GCF plus leftovers. So that means my goal is going to be 2 parentheses equals 0. Okay, and I'm going to have binomials in here. So let's take a look. So if I'm going to factor this, I want to look at the factors of 15, just like we did in the last unit. And I need to find a factor pair that adds up to 8. So factors of 15, I really have 2 options. I have 1 and 15, and I have 3 and 5. Okay, I'm going to choose 3 and 5 because if I look at this, 3 times 5 is positive 15, and 3 plus 5 equals 8, my middle term. So this factor is x plus 3 times the quantity x plus 5. Okay, now, so I've gotten my factor goal. Now I'm going to do what I did yesterday, and I'm going to set each parentheses equal to 0. So I'm going to set this one equal to 0 and this one equal to 0. So my first is x plus 3 equals 0, and my second is going to be x plus 5 equals 0. Okay, let's solve these equations. So I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides, and I get x equals negative 3. Over here, I'm going to solve this equation and get x by itself. I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides, and I end up with x equals negative 5. Okay, so my final answer would be, in this case, my x could equal negative 3, or my x could equal negative 5, and I have two solutions. All right, it's time for you to try your gotta check. So your gotta check is problem 2A, and that is on page 556. I'm going to erase a little bit here so that we can get our got it check in. Okay, pause the video, come back when you've got a solution. Okay, let's try the got it check. So we were on page 556 and we were doing number 2A. 2A was m squared minus 5m minus 14 equals 0. Okay, so the good news is step number 1, which was standard form, check. It's already in standard form. I have my trinomial and it equals 0, so I'm set to go. I don't have to do anything special there. Okay, next up, step number 2, I need to factor this. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at negative 14, and I need factors that would give me a multiple of negative 14, and the middle terms would add up to negative 5. So as I look at negative 14, I think my clear winners are going to be negative 7 and positive 2. So let's see if that works. Negative 7 times positive 2 would give me negative 14. And then if I add these two together, negative 7 plus 2, that would give me my middle term of negative 5. Okay, so my factored goal is going to be m minus 7 times the quantity m plus 2 equals 0. Okay, so I have my goal. Next up, I'm going to do the zero product. So I'm going to do the zero product. We'll just abbreviate that. And I'm going to set both of these equal to 0. So I have m minus 7 equals 0, and on the other side, m plus 2 equals 0. If I solve these equations and add 7 to both sides, I get m equals positive 7. And over here, if I subtract 2 from both sides to solve the equation, I get m equals negative 2. So my solutions would be m equals 7 or m equals negative 2. All right, done and done. So it's time for you guys to try homework. So remember, your homework is page 558, numbers 14 to 16, and numbers 20 to 22. Your bell ringer is page 552, number 54. All right, bye 8th grade. See you tomorrow.